Okay, in the next 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes, I'm going to show you how you can create a really quite impressive report. This is an example of it by using data that's quick and easy to take out of Sims, and we create this report really quickly. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Sims itself. And we'll use Sims Reports, the standard Sims reporting engine that's been with Sims for many, many years now. A lot of people have already been familiar with this, and I'd be surprised even if you're not familiar with it, somebody in your school will be familiar with it as well. So I've already created an example report. So I'm just going to go into that as reports, design reports. I'm going to open the report I've created as a little demo here just to save a little bit of time. The first time you do it, of course, you'll create a new report by clicking this link here. If I open up this report now, and I go down the list to my little demo report here, I'll show you what I've created. Very easy to create these reports because they're usually based on just the defaults. So I've chosen to base this report on my students who are on roll, is the first and most important thing there. Go to the data fields section. Here are all the data fields that I've chosen from the ones that Sims makes available to me down this side of the screen here. And here's all the ones I've chosen to appear in my report. All these will appear as columns. And they'll appear as columns. The column header will be whatever we see here. If we see anything in square brackets, that will actually override the default column header. So you can see there we shortened date of birth to DOB and date of arrival to DOA. So this is what we've done. The first and possibly one of the most important columns on there is the unique identifier for the pupil. So I've chosen admission number there as my unique identifier, but you also have access to UPN, which is less reliable because, of course, some pupils might not have a UPN or they may have a temporary UPN allocated to them. A much more useful unique identifier is admission number, but be aware that admission number can be duplicated if you have more than one school in your mat. So although admission numbers are unique within your school, they're not guaranteed to be unique within the entire mat. So for some schools, we recommend they use a third type of unique identifier, which is available from the third-party fields section here, which is external ID, and that is unique across all the schools if you have a mat. But I'm going to use admission number here just because it's convenient and it's relatively short. Anyway, underneath that, we've put name and registration, which is a composite field that Capita gives us access to. It's surname, forename, and registration group. Immediately afterwards, I could have used a separate column for surname and forename and bring out registration group later, but I've chosen to use this special composite field that Sims creates for us. Then date of admission and date of birth, gender, registration group on its own, useful to have it as part of the name, but it's also useful to have it on its own too. And then year taught in code. You'll notice if you look down the list here under registration details that there is year group, which is there, and there's current, leaving year, and year group at date of leaving. There's various ones here. The tempting one to use is year group, but that's less good because you might have one year group that's called Y8, and the next year group might be called YR09, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of variation there, possibly, even within your school. So we tend to use year taught in code, which is this one here, and that is, again, generated internally by Sims, but it's always a number, the number 7, the number 8, the number 9, whatever it might be. I've put postcode in there, useful for map visualizations, and LEA care if you looked after children, free school meals and pupil premium indicators on there as they're linked together, really. And then I've got a whole section of attendance related columns. And if you look down the side here, the attendance related columns are available to us from here. We have an attendance summary for the current year. Now, Capita provides for us a summary of attendance. It records all the individual marks you give them, obviously, every lesson. But in the background, it's also calculating a year-to-date summary of all the absences and present marks that the pupils acquired. And Sims makes this summary available to us in this section here. And that's where I've brought the next set of columns in for. It presents it in two formats. There's the percentage attendance summary for the current year as a percentage, but there's also this one, which is the more useful one, which just gives us the count of how many sessions, remember 2 sessions a day, how many sessions the pupil has been present for in school. And it presents them to us in the form of these set of columns that we can add in there. And the most useful ones there are the ones that go up to make up the percentage attendance figure. We've got present plus educational activity, approved educational activity there, which is one of them, and possible sessions, which is also on this list here somewhere. If it's not, we can, oh, there it is, possible marks. And it's the ratio of those two that effectively gives us the percentage attendance for our pupils. But I've brought in lots of other useful data there. Lateness, in terms of how many minutes late they are before or after the registration is closed. How many missing marks if staff have been forgetting to complete registers, etc., etc. And then I've got a section on ethnicity, which is basically just going down this list. And there are various subsections to this list. So if we go down and have a look at, for example, ethnic stroke cultural, which is this one, this particular section contains a raft of ethnicity, home language, first language, other things that you'll find very useful when you are analysing your data. So ethnicity, home language and first language are the ones I've brought out there. I've also put some achievement points in there. Again, if you use the conduct system in Sims, not all schools do, but if you do, Sims will calculate for us the total number of achievement points for the academic year to date and the total number of behaviour points, again, for the academic year to date, and the number of detentions, initiatives and report cards recorded for that pupil. And then I've just finished off with the SEN status code. So then, once we've created those columns there, we can more or less just accept the defaults in the rest of the options that Sims gives us, because we don't need to filter any results. We just want every pupil. We don't need to put them in a particular order. We're quite happy for Power BI to do that. So we can skip through the next few screens here. And again, the effective date for the report is just today. You always want it to run as of today, and we'll give the pupils on roll as of today. So then I'll click next again. And then this is the important bit. This is where we define what format the output file is in. And this is where we have to make sure we've chosen text as the output format, where we've chosen comma-separated value as the actual format of the file, and where we've given us a location to run the file and export the file to. I also recommend that you untick this box, the one that says suppress duplicates. Not particularly important on this particular type of report, but for other reports that you might create later on, then it's important to not suppress duplicate records, because you want a full list of every single column for every single pupil. A tip before we finally click the Run button here is to click the Preview button, which just shows us on the screen exactly what that file looks like. Sometimes it takes a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes to run this report. But bear in mind that what it's doing in the background is actually calculating all that conduct information. It's calculating all the attendance information, as well as just putting the standard columns from the pupil database. Sims often says not responding when it's running anything, but look at the bottom of the screen there, where you have a little message that says generating report. If there are any problems, it will tell you, usually first down at the bottom there. Well, there we go. That's 935 rows, so that's probably the number of pupils we have on roll. In fact, I hope it is. And this is giving us a preview of what it looks like. So I do this because it's useful. You'll see any problems up front, perhaps, if you've misidentified a column or whatever. This gives you a chance to have a look at it, make sure it looks good. And when you're happy with it, you can click the Run button here, and instead of having to wait for another minute or so, then it just does it straight away and creates our pupildata.csv file there. So then we go to Power BI, and this is what I'm aiming for. If possible, over the next 10 minutes. I'm going to push it a little bit here in 10 minutes, but I'm going to try and achieve this report in the next 10 minutes. So let's create from scratch a brand new Power BI report here. And just while Power BI loads up, you will benefit, I think, if you're running this on a PC or a laptop, from as much RAM as you can throw at it. I think I've got about 16 meg in this one, and it certainly appreciates it. so you'll probably want to choose a reasonably well spec'd laptop, although Power BI Desktop does seem to run on a wide range of PCs. This is a splash screen. I'll just get rid of that. And here we have a blank report. I'm just going to minimize this filters pane here. I don't really have time to go into that today, but it's an interesting digression at some stage. And what we've got here basically is a blank sheet of paper with a single tab at the bottom. You can see we can add further tabs by clicking on the plus button at the bottom. But everything above this dotted line is basically our report page, one page of our report. And reports eventually will generate multiple pages. Well, this will be the first page, and this is the page which will put our most important, perhaps, our top level headline figures on there. So a tip, before you start putting any visualizations on there, you see all the visualizations are lined up there, but before you start to add them, I find it's very useful to apply a color to this white piece of paper that we've got here. And to do that, I go to the Format tab just there, and I go to Page Background, and click on Color, choose one of the theme colors, choose that nice pale blue color. I usually set a bit of transparency on it so it's not too in your face. And that just adds a shade to the background there. That I find very useful when I want to position visualizations on the screen. We'll come to those visualizations in a minute. But at the moment, we have got nothing to analyze. We have not got any data at the moment. It's still sitting in that CSV file. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click on Get Data, which is here. Okay. So we'll click on Get Data. And we've got an option to import various different types of data. And again, it's an interesting half hour. We could talk about the different types of data you could bring in from Power BI, but we're going to concentrate on text and CSV files for now. So I'll click on text and CSV files here. I can tell here that the couple of files in this subdirectory, but the one I've just created a few moments ago is this one, pupil data. So I'll open that one. And what it's now doing is creating a connection into that CSV file. So it's not just pulling the data as a one-off action. It's creating a connection and it's recording the steps that we now take with this file. And that means that when we next refresh the file, it's going to generate a bunch of steps that it can repeat every time we update that CSV file and open up Power BI. Those steps will be remembered, like I say, and be repeated. So that's why it talks about a connection rather than just copying or opening or whatever. I'm going to click on Load here. You can see what it's done. It's created all our pupil names down the side. It's identified the admission number as being a number, so it's put it in italics. It's identified date of arrival and date of birth as being date, so it's put there in italics too. The rest, it said, are more or less all text columns. Well, there's your taught in code, which identified that as being numeric. But it certainly picked up the fact that the first line of the CSV file was headers, and it's promoted those to headers. So that's all happened. So it seems to have understood that CSV file very well. So we'll click the load button. And now, like I say, some messages flash up. Talks about connections, talks about data models. And again, there's another at least half hour we could spend talking about data models. But what it should do at the end of this is populate this side of the screen with all the column headings from that CSV file, and all it's done there basically is put them into alphabetical order with a mission number up at the top. It's pointed out the sigma sign here represents columns that are numbers, and obviously got a calendar symbol there for the dates, and everything else it's interpreted as text. So let's put on here our very first visualization. I'm going to put a bar chart on there, and I've just chosen a simple stacked column chart. Let's make it quite big, then you can see it at the back. There it is. And this is what it looks. This is just an empty placeholder, so I can size it and place it where I want it to be. Make sure it's highlighted. And when you do, you'll see there are a bunch of boxes here that can be filled in. One says axis, one says legend, one says value. Not all visualizations have exactly the same boxes available for them. If you choose a different visualization, you might get a slightly different selection of boxes, but probably the one that's consistent across every single one of them is one that's called value, because it's the most important one. It's the one that actually has in it what we want to count up to create our graph with, if you see what I mean. So it's the one that I always try and fill out first. And sometimes it takes a little bit of thinking. Like this graph, for example, this first graph. What I want it to do is count up the number of pupils we have in our school. And there's nothing here that immediately leaps out as being that number. I've got to really use something else to generate that number. And I could use various different things, but what I'm going to ask it to do here is I'm going to ask it to use the admission number and count up how many admission numbers there are in that CSV file. Watch what happens when I drag admission number to a value here. Well, it's thinking. You can see it's thinking, and now it's thought, and now it's come up with something really what looks like at first quite bizarre. It's come up with a massive 4.5 million. And you might be thinking, what on earth's that? Well, 4.5 million, what's it got there? You can find out, use the little drop down arrow at the side there. You see, something's happened here. First thing that's happened is that it spotted that admission number was a number. And it said, okay, with numbers, I can do lots of things. I can add them, I can average them, I can calculate the minimum, pick out the maximum. I could count how many unique ones there are, or I could just count up how many there actually are. And I could do some even fancier things, standard deviation, variances, and medians. But it's because it's a number. It spotted it's a number, and it said, well, with numbers, I tend to add them up, and that's what it's done. It's added all those admission numbers up. Not quite what I wanted there, but that's okay. I can change it, and I can change it to one that I do want. And I'm going to suggest that counting up how many admission numbers there are is going to be a good way of calculating how many pupils there are. So I'm going to click on count. There we go. Didn't seem to change that much, but the scale's changed here. And if I hover the mouse, 935. And I know that that is the actual count of pupils that I have in my on my roll as of today. So I now have a very, very simple graph that's giving me that count of pupils. And fantastic, yeah, great. It's a bit boring. I could possibly make this graph a little bit more useful if I made this a sort of a count of pupils in each year group. That's a really straightforward thing to do from this point on. Now we've done the hard bit, if you like. You remember I said we've got these 3 boxes here, which are usually the most important boxes. Value is the one that is most important. We've sorted that out now. It's calculating, counting up pupils for us. We've got the axis here. Imagine this graph, how I want it to look. Maybe with year 7 there, year 8, year 9, year 10, year 11, along the axis. And there's the key word. There's the clue. What I want to do is put year groups along the axis here. If I scroll down here, you should find we've got year sorting code. And if I move that up to there, there's the year sorting code. And there we go. There's the kind of graph that I was looking for. There's each year group from year 7 to year 13. And it's telling us how many pupils are in each one. And you'll see we can use the tooltips there to identify 159 pupils in year sorting code. Well, I'm not keen about count of add number there. What I want to do is change that to say count of pupils. Well, I can do that just by changing that text there. And now it says count of pupils there, and now it says count of pupils down the side. Another thing I'm not too keen on with this report is the format, in as much that I like to see the actual percentage or the actual number of pupils in each year group just there. So I've just turned the data labels on by going into the format section there. Just turn those data labels on. Microsoft always like to do things in 8 and 9 point letters, which always annoys me. So I'm going to change that to 12 points and make sure they're nice and big because I'm getting slightly short-sighted. And the position right at the top there, I usually like to position them if possible so that they are inside the center. So that's looking a lot more informative. Having put the numbers down there, I don't think I need a y-axis down the side there. So what I usually do is turn the y-axis off. Keep everything as simple as possible, as few visual elements on there as I possibly can get. So that looks really good. I'm quite happy with that now. I'm going to make one further improvement to this though. I'm going to make this graph drillable, so I can drill down into the data in this graph. because at the moment we look at the whole of year 7 or the whole of year 8, but wouldn't it be nice if I could drill down into the registration groups within year 7 or within year 8 and find out what the makeup of those particular groups is? So let's do that. On the axis here, I've got year taught encode, and that's the only level, if you like, that I have here. But you'll find I can take registration group and I can drop it. I can drop it either above or below year taught encode. Now, naturally, I think year taught encode is at the higher level, so I'll leave that above and put registration group underneath. Nothing really changes now on this graph. But if you've noticed, I've got some extra options here. I've got some extra arrows at the top of the screen here. And these indicate that I can now drill down. I have to turn drill down on first. And I click that button to turn drill down on. But now when I click on the 161 pupils in year group 11, it drills down into year group 11. And I can see now the individual registration groups. So that's drill down. So it's starting to look really good, this. Bit big, I don't want it to take up the whole screen, so I'm going to resize it, move it to one side slightly like that. Next thing I might want to do here is I might really want a visualization perhaps that shows me how many pupils I've got in the whole school. So I'm going to create now a little card visualization. So I just clicked into some page blank space there, and I'll click on the card visualization. There's the placeholder for the card visualization. I want a card visualization that just tells me how many pupils are in the entire school. I've lost that information now. So I'm going to use that same dodge to take admission number, drop it into, in this case, the only box we have for a card visualization, which is this one here, fields. And again, what it does, it tries to add them up. Every time we give Power BI a number, it's going to try and add them up doggedly, even if that's not what we want it to do. So I'm going to persuade it now that what I really wanted it to do was just count up how many there are in that list. So there's our list of pupils on roll. Maybe that should go up here. I can squeeze it in. There we go. So now I'm going to create another bar chart here. Maybe that lists SEN pupils. How many SEN pupils do I have in school? Maybe how many pupil premium? Let's go for pupil premium first. How many pupil premium pupils do we have in school? So again, a bar chart, old faithful bar chart. Change it slightly. Doesn't need to be quite as big as the old one. And what do I want to do here? What am I doing? What am I counting up? Because that's what goes into values there. So whatever I'm counting up needs to go there. Well, again, I want to count pupils. So again, I'm going to use this proxy of using admission number as a way of counting up how many pupils we have. So again, I'm going to drop it here. Start to see the theme that's developing here. And then I'm going to change it from sum to count. And again, got that graph appearing again, similar to the one we had before. And then, again, thinking about what I want this graph to look like, I want a column that says pupil premium pupils and a column that says not pupil premium pupils. So on the axis here, I am going to put pupil premium. So let's go down the list. There's pupil premium. On the axis, I put pupil premium. So now it's pupil premium F for false and T for true. I would very much like it to have the same format as this one here. So I can highlight this one here, click on the format painter and apply that format to this. So now it's in exactly the same format as that one. Let's do the same thing again, but let's do it for special needs pupils. So I can actually this time save a bit more time. I'm going to copy, I'm going to use the clipboard here. So I'm going to copy that visualization and then paste a copy of it. I'm going to pop that next to the original one. And I'm going to then change one or two other things here. So instead of it saying axis pupil premium indicator, maybe it should say axis SEN status. We've got SEN status there. We've got SEN status code. I'll just use the code because it's a little bit more concise. And put that on. And there we go. You'll see we've got K, E, and M codes. So the M code is one that the school had generated. It's an internal code. And we've got this large chunk of pupils here who are no SEN. And it's blank. And you can see it's blank because there's nothing under there. On this particular graph, I'm going to say, well, I don't need to know how many non-pupil premium pupils I've got on here. I just want to know how many are pupil premium. not pupil premium, SEN. So what we can do with any of these visualizations is we can apply a filter to the visualization. So we just analyze the results that we want to analyze. So on this filter pane, you see we've got filters on this visual, filters on this page, and filters on all pages. Filters on the visual is the one I'm interested in here. That's this one here. And currently it's showing all SEN status codes. Well, I'm just interested in E and in K. Not interested in the blank one or the M code, whatever that is. So now you can see we've got a graph here that just shows the pupil premium pupils. Let's do the same for gender. And I'm going to do a similar operation here. I'm going to copy. So I'm going to use the keyboard this time. So it's Control and C, and then Control and V to put a copy in there. And we'll position it up here. Same idea. All we're going to do is leave count of admission number there. We'll take off the axis and put gender there. So now we've got an identification of how many boys we've got, how many girls we've got. Once you've got them on the screen there, if you decided rather that as a pie chart, you can just, with the visualization highlighted, click on the pie chart there, and it swaps it to a pie chart visualization, like that. So let's have another card on here, a card that has got maybe an indication of how many pupils speak a different language at home. If you've got a very diverse school, it's very likely that you'll have an impressive number of languages being spoken at home. So let's see if we can put a visualization on here that highlights that. So again, click into some white space. We're going to use the card visualization just here. Let's move it over here perhaps. And let's have a think again about what we want to do. But it's home language that is very important for us. With a card visualization, we just have this one box we can fill out here. And I can go down and find from the list here, there should be one called home language. There it is. I've lost it then. There it goes. Pop that onto fields. What's that done? Well, home language is text. And some pupils have some text in there. Some pupils it's blank for. We've not filled out a home language. And it's given us a clue what it's done there. It's called it first home language. So basically it's gone down the list of that home language column, and whatever the first one was, it's popped that in there. Well, again, that's not what we want. So let's go to the drop down there. And let's see what we've got. Well, because this is a text column, it's only given us a restricted number of options for text. We can't do much with text. And it's telling us what we can do. We can put the first one in, the last one in. We can count the number of distinct ones in, the number of different home language codes that we've put in there, or we can count them all up. If I do what I did before and click count, all that's going to do is tell us how many people there are in the whole year group, in the whole school rather. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to count distinct ones. And that should give us that we have 23 languages spoken at home for our pupils. Okay, and I'm running out of time and I've gone over again. So I'm going to finish this off by just putting two visualizations on there. Tree map visualizations here are very, very useful for showing the actual mix of genders or languages or whatever within the school. So I'm going to take, we know we've got 23 languages spoken there. Let's just expand that a little bit. And what I can do is we can pop home languages. Oops, no, I was about to make a mistake there. The mistake I was about to do was I hadn't selected my visualization before I dragged across home language there, and you can see there I've probably changed one of the other visualizations by accident. They're very easy to do, so do make sure that you highlight your visualization down the side there. I'm going to take home language. And again, if I've got more than one, I've got group, details, and values there. Well, what do I choose for this one? Well, what do I want to do? I want to count up how many pupils there are in each group. So under values, I'll use admission number again. But under group, I'm going to put home language. There you go, I've put home language in there. Not much seems to have happened. That's because I've not yet told it that I want to count up the number of pupils for each home language. So again, I use admission number as my proxy for a count of pupils. And again, what it does, first of all, is adds up all the admission numbers. But what I want it to do is to count the number of pupils. So now what I've got is a visualization that tells me 658 pupils speak English at home, 212. I've got a blank language spoken at home. Maybe that's not so good. And 12 pupils speak Italian. etc., etc. And the final one I'm going to do, I'm going to put a slicer on here. Slicer is really useful for allowing your end users to focus in on particular groups. There are other ways of allowing your end users to focus in on different groups, but this is a really, really easy thing for them to understand. And no matter how computer literate they are, most people can get the hang of these pretty quickly. So I'm going to put a slicer in there, and I'm going to put a slicer in there that just takes registration group and allows the end user to choose one particular registration group, or they can even, if they want to choose multiple registration groups, they can choose multiple registration groups by control and clicking. So you can even show them how to do this for a key stage. Or whatever you need them to do. So that's it. Sorry, I've overgone there. I should have taken 20 minutes, I've taken 30. But already you can see what we've got here is a really, really useful analysis of data within 30 minutes. I think that's 30 minutes well spent of anybody's time. Thank you.